All right. Chris, great to see you.
Great
Um,
to meet you, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So let's start with so where are we today? That's a game I like to play. Where are you?
I am in beautiful Switzerland at the moment, staring. You can't see it, but out here I have the Alps in front of me. So very, very happy. My happy place. And
It's
you, how
good.
about you? Where are you? It looks a lot sunnier.
Yeah, it is quite a bit sunny. You can see a little palm tree down in the corner. I'm down in Miami. So whenever there's a polar vortex, I leave. No, down here, got some meetings. So happy to be in Miami. It's really beautiful. I tell you what, this is a really amazing city. Every time I come here, I'm always surprised. It's a huge, proper city. People forget about that sometimes, but it's probably one of the most international cities in the United States. I would argue. There's quite a few, but Miami certainly is. But it's a great place to be and to get away from that polar vortex. But all right, so once again, welcome everyone. I'm super excited to be here with you, Chris. Chris Dell. We've got an exciting set of topics to cover for today. First, we're going to cover top trends that shaped localization this year. And next, we're going to talk about what you can do to get prepared for 2026. So, Chris, you've worked with so many localization teams just this year. So I'm really excited to dig into what actually happened in 2025. But before we get into that, can you share a little bit about your background and the type of work that you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me, Brian. Really, really happy to be spending more time with you. We had great time in London just a couple of months ago. Really, really cool to learn a little bit more about what you're doing. A little bit about me. My background is kind of content. It's like almost 30 years now, which kind of pains me to say it. Of every
Yeah.
type of content you can possibly imagine. I've done, picture research. I've done writing. I've done translation. I've done long form copy, short form copy, photography. I've done all sorts of kind of content, which just kind of gets me very excited and across multiple industries as well. I guess today I'm kind of best known for running content at booking.com, which I did for, well, more than a decade until last year, which also was covering every type of content you can possibly imagine. It's quite a big operation there. Today, since leaving Booking, I run advisory, I do coaching, I collaborate with Nimsy Insights. And I guess I kind of have two main focus areas, which we'll definitely touch on today. The first is sort of content slash localization. And then the second is, should we say, leadership development slash just running better business. So as part of that, I do quite a lot of mentoring. I do coaching of senior leaders. I work a lot with product and tech leaders, which I think will be very relevant in our conversation today. So I really kind of see both sides of the coin, and that's my kind of big focus at the moment. How do I bring business and localization closer together so that we can have more productive partnerships?
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's really sort of the gist of what we're aiming for in 2025 and then heading into 2026 as we think about it. So when we go back and we take a look, and now we're wrapping up on 2025, which is hard to believe, but what was the biggest shift you saw across localization teams?
Okay, yeah, and you said in the intro, right? I've met with a lot of teams over the course of this year. Okay, hot take on the basis of kind of some of the conversations I've been having. Um, AI, inescapable, and it's getting more and more real. Expectations are shifting, and there are so many debates raging at the moment around how AI is really going to kind of impact the world and ultimately what the impact will be. Obviously, I think people are realizing that some expectations are a little bit overinflated in the short term. In localization, where I would argue most modern language processing, LLMs, etc., kind of originated. I think we're sort of used to it already. The difference is that the rest of the world is kind of catching up and now starting to impose certain assumptions as to what should be possible in the localization space with LLMs, etc. And I think there are kind of a couple of aspects to this. Leadership, people who maybe don't, they sort of know a little bit about localization, but not deeply. They just assume that, hey, localization increasingly is a solved problem with technology. It'll just get faster, it'll get cheaper, the quality will be fine because, these LLMs, etc. AI these days is so kind of great. That's led to a lot of impact in teams. I mean, if I look at the travel space, which I know extremely well, I've seen quite a few cuts over the course of this year in that industry, as people start to build in assumptions about the likely impact of AI in the future. And by the way, that's not just content, not just localization. I mean, that's across the entire board. So to a certain extent, what's happening in localization, with the kind of advent of AI, we are seeing in many, many other departments. You're also seeing in people departments and finance, et cetera, customer service, obviously. But for localization, very, very material. And of course, this has a quite big human impact as well, because teams in localization are feeling more and more pressure to really kind of prove their value, their relevance. They want to talk more and more about ROI. It's been a little bit kind of unsettling. Sorry, this sounds very negative, and actually, I don't feel negative about the situation at all. But we have to acknowledge it's been a bit of a shake-up this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think it's fair to address the sort of the anxiety that we all feel. It's funny. I'll bring sort of like a perspective to it, which is that listen, I'm a CEO of a company. I have a board. I have investors, and all of that sort of thing. Let me sort of give my perspective on what's happening in the C-suite, which is the C-suite, the CEOs, the leadership teams are under tremendous pressure from investors to implement and show results from AI. So we're putting a lot of pressure on the organization to do that. And there's a phrase that I sometimes use, and I sort of throw it around a little bit, maybe. And as you were talking, I was actually thinking about it a little bit more, which is that AI, right, may not replace your job, but someone who knows how to use AI effectively will. I think that's a real statement. And I think that one of the pieces of pressure that I feel sometimes is that happening within these organizations, right? And I think there's two things happening. One is this pressure coming down, right, to use AI. If the localization teams or teams, whether they're engineering teams or localization teams or marketing teams, are not moving fast enough to implement and show results from AI, someone else from within the organization or externally will put that pressure and take that lead. And I think that's where we see a lot of this anxiety. I do think it's a real thing. So once again, I think that, to your point, there's massive pressure moving down through the organization to use AI. Number two is, this is really interesting. I saw this happening. And I think that localization managers will appreciate this comment. I feel a big pressure, a big focus on turnaround time. Right, to improve turnaround time. And that's because I think AI, right, people's use of AI is resetting user expectations, right? What's the average turnaround for human translation? A couple of weeks? Like, what? Like, that's like forever, right? No one. And so what happens is you've got these people who are kind of going off lone wolf. They're like, oh, wait, my loc team just told me it was going to take 2 weeks or 7 days or whatever days to get this translation. I'm just going to use GPT. Yeah. Right. So it's creating this reset, this expectation around turnaround time. So not only are you getting this pressure, but then I think you're getting these internal stakeholders that are saying, whoa, wait, my expectation set is shifted. So it's creating this really tremendous uncertainty and change. So, and I think this ties into my next question for you, which is, one theme that we hear constantly as a result of this is that localization teams are struggling internally. From the conversations, I know you speak with dozens of localization teams every year. From your conversations with these teams, what are loc teams having the hardest time with right now?
Yeah, we have such great people in the kind of localization community, but I've definitely seen, to your point, like a growing unease. And again, I don't want to sound negative about this, because I long term, I really don't feel negative about this at all. But you have to acknowledge, like, there's a bit of an inflection point at the moment. We're definitely going through a transition. Yeah. I think the root cause of the unease is uncertainty. Like, because for me, uncertainty. Now, I guess I'm kind of speaking more as a kind of leadership coach, etc. But it's always uncertainty. It's ambiguity that's the enemy of really good business. And right now we're in this kind of moment where, like, things are going to change. Some people are trying to impose changes. To your point, maybe there are even people within certain organizations who don't come from a loc background at all, but who start to kind of play around with stuff, and they say, hey, this is really easy. We can just kind of integrate this API, and kind of weird, slightly kind of cowboy stuff happens around the edges. Like none of that creates a really kind of productive, exciting, stable environment. So, inevitably some lot teams are a little bit kind of can feel a tiny bit on the back foot. And we have to really kind of think then, hey, how do we present ourselves to leadership? I've actually been doing quite a few workshops, including one with yourselves on how can we kind of push people a little bit harder to present the localization function a little bit better to leadership in using slightly more kind of business terms. How do we show that we are in control of the technology, that we actually understand this technology? We've probably been using it a lot longer. Many of the people kind of adapting it currently in our organizations. And therefore, we can be trusted to kind of embrace it and move forwards with it. While at the same time really explaining just a much stronger story in terms of our expertise and all the kind of experience that we bring to this. We've also seen quite a lot of teams switching a little bit internally in terms of kind of reporting lines. So I mean, it does feel at the moment, if I look at the the wider world of business, a lot of companies it's like throwing a pack of kind of cards in the air and just seeing where everything lands. And companies themselves are kind of reconfiguring their operations. Many organizations now suddenly have chief AI officers, for example. Are they then responsible for all AI applications across the entire business, or are they there just as a champion of kind of AI just to kind of get people excited? It's deeply unclear. And in all of this, we've seen quite a few lock teams shift from maybe like a kind of generic operations, maybe marketing, something like that, into, let's say, more of a tech environment. Because again, it's like it's language processing, and therefore it kind of looks like AI. Okay, fine. Then it's kind of, okay, let's put them with engineering, put them with tech. It's kind of logical home. Can be a logical home, by the way. It depends massively what sort of product, what sort of platform, etc. you're supporting with localization. Can be a very logical place to be, but it's also a huge change. Because suddenly you have to, you get used to telling a particular story to the people around you, and suddenly you have to tell a completely new story to a completely new audience, and that's a kind of tough thing to. I don't know. I'm curious. Like, is that something you've seen as well yourself, Bryan?
Yeah, we have. I've seen localization teams, move out of marketing and into product, and having much more of an engineering bent. I see engineering teams take up the mantle of localization because of their experience, building applications and large, dealing with large language models. So I've seen all of that. And I think this is very what's funny? When I think about this, this reminds me a lot of like the late '90s when the commercialization of the internet was happening, right? It's like here was this brand new technology. There were very few applications built. It was really the Wild West. I mean, if you wanted to get into the internet, right, you had to build all of your own stuff. And here we are now with this massive technology shift with AI, and I think we just had the third birthday of, I can't believe it's the third birthday of GPT, but it's, we've been familiar with for the last 2.5 years. But up until this point, there's been very few AI applications, right, to use. It's kind of been this raw technology. And now we're in the world of where there's these really powerful applications being built that harness this new technology. And so I think we're seeing that shift now. So if we saw, for example, that the famous MIT study, 95% of enterprise AI projects are failing to deliver value, right? That doesn't surprise me a bit, right? And I think that 26 is going to be the year where that pendulum begins to swing back, because now there are purpose-built AI applications that solve very specific problems. And we're moving into that next phase of this technology evolution, which I think is going to be really, really interesting.
I agree 100%. And all you got to look at is, just the kind of capital, the CapEx investments being made by particularly the kind of very, very large kind of companies out there, the kind of Googles, the Apples, the Microsofts, etc., OpenAI. Like, they anticipate AI not going anywhere. It will only become more important in the future. So again, this is the moment for us to start kind of embracing it and not kind of resist too much. Embrace,
yeah,
but
and I think that
control.
Yeah, right. I think that's right, and I do think that it's really important here uh, for teams, whether they're engineering teams or they're localization teams or marketing teams, whatever. We're heading into 2026.
Yeah.
26, I think, is going to be a very, very pivotal year from from a from a people perspective, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really important. My advice is my strong advice to people on this call listening in on this conversation is that um, you have a plan, you have a strategy for 26 that leans into AI in a meaningful way. I just think it's going to be very important. So I think kind of pivoting into let's start talking about 26, right? So Chris, if you had to pick one thing every localization leader should focus on as they think about and they enter 26, what would it be?
Have a have a plan. I mean, you just kind of referenced it yourself, right? Have a strategy. I Now, I don't say this with any judgment whatsoever, but I have spoken to too many lock teams over the last few months who don't have a very clear plan for 2026. And there can be a bunch of different reasons for that. Actually, for me, I think one of the biggest kind of underlying challenges within localization is that we've got very, very good at building really quite complex, quite sophisticated processes and then running those processes extremely well. I mean, there's so much experience, passion, commitment, just expertise within the lock community. We've got very, very good at kind of building these very hybrid solutions, very technologically advanced solutions. Um, as I say, now the entire deck of cards gets kind of thrown in the air. And it's the moment for us to say, okay, probably the way that we did it in the past won't be the way we do it in the future. So what does that actually look like? No, it will be a relatively kind of gradual transition, but we have to own the transition. We have to steer the transition. So
Yeah.
build really solid 2026 strategy and don't just kind of build it, but share it, socialize it. You and I have talked about this before, like take it out to your stakeholders. How do you feel about this? What are your needs? How can we work with you? I mean, localization is a fundamentally reactive process, which is to say you can't typically do it by yourself unless you're extremely lucky and you control, kind of source and localization. Generally speaking, you're working with a bunch of stakeholders across the entire business. So are you capturing their needs? Are you having that conversation? And are you building a plan that actually kind of really responds to their needs as your company goes in a particular direction?
Yeah, yeah, I love that going out and asking, your internal stakeholders, your internal customers, what do you need? What are your expectations? And then coming forward, I definitely think it's really important that we, as an industry, be front-footed on this. Our teams, our customers should be front-footed on this, not waiting, because you're probably not going to like the answer if you wait.
Exactly. But I'm kind of curious because I mean, you must interact with like a huge number of customers, right? Through Smartling. Like, what are
Yeah.
you? What? Yeah. Who do you see with really kind of strong strategies, and what are they doing differently?
Yeah, so we've obviously thousands of companies that we work with, and I kind of like zoom out. It was really interesting. A couple of things. I was just looking at these numbers the other day. I was preparing for something else. I was thinking about the end of the year, and it's really interesting. Our customers that are using AI for translation have improved their turnaround times by 6x. Okay, 6x, and over the last couple of years, reduced their cost per word by
Mm,
60%, right? And have 99% of their content automated, right? Those are like incredible numbers, like real world impact of AI on a function, right? And so as a result, those that are being front footed about that are
mm,
are doing pretty well. With our customers that are not there yet, right? Oh, I should say one more thing, and this is remarkable. This is the really interesting number that 84% of the translation that we're doing now, 84% is AI based, right? So that's what's generating those numbers. So that's massive impact. Like this is what we do. Smartling is an AI translation platform. That's what we do. And so we have this incredible team of people that are working with our customers now who are asking questions about, hey, what should I be doing? What do I need to be doing? And this is where, we have this experience set over the last 2.5 years about how to effectively implement AI within an enterprise. What works, and importantly, what doesn't work, right? What's the best way? So I think number one is, to me, I think that the teams, I think you need to have a plan. And I think you need to be talking, to your point, you should be talking to your stakeholders about what they need and be socializing that plan early, right? Number one. Number two is, I would connect business KPIs to your business, right? So in other words, this is really interesting. Going around the world and talking to localization teams, I was surprised at the number of times I would ask this question: do you know what your marketing department's KPIs are?
Yeah.
A fair amount of the time, I got kind of like a cocked head and said, no, we don't. I said, that's a miss. Okay. You need to know your customers' KPIs, and then you need to tie those KPIs to your own and at least be able to communicate to them in a way that matters, right? So the KPIs are probably something like international growth, per country growth, conversion rate, engagement, CSAT, any of those. Now you understand how they get paid their bonus, right? I always like to ask people, how do you get paid? What are you bonused on, right?
Yeah. How was your performance measured at the end of the day? Yeah.
Right. Those are understanding those things are really important, right? To help you design your strategy, and then also be able to communicate with them and share those goals, adopt those goals. And I think that's how you get budget, right? So the other big thing that we're looking for in this age of OpEx, right, is like there's a lot of cuts to, all the enterprises are focused on OpEx. Well, if you're not generating a return on investment, if you're not able to show, hey, I was able to generate this much growth, that's the most important thing, or reduce this much in OpEx by implementing this thing, you're going to struggle to get budget, right? And that's what we all want. We want a bigger purview. So I think it's the way you do that is by adopting the enterprise's KPIs as your own and showing that you can influence those.
Yeah. No, I see. There are some teams out there who are extremely good at this already. And I absolutely love talking to them. They fully understand the full suite of kind of KPIs being used across the business. They can really kind of build something in tandem with the rest of the business, and they are, as a result, taken a lot more seriously. Because otherwise, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, so let's talk KPIs. Which metrics do you think matter the most to executives going into 2026?
Yeah, I mean, there's a slightly dull answer, and then there's a more interesting answer. So let me start with the kind of dull, basic kind of business hygiene. We're very good at generating very operational metrics in localization, and they are important, of course. You've already referenced a couple of them. Turnaround time, so the ability to deliver very, very fast, because otherwise probably you're holding back some sort of go-to-market or whatever, and therefore you're hurting the business. So hygiene, we want to turn stuff around faster. We want quality to be good enough that it's not going to impact, let's say, brand perception or the efficacy of a product. And cost is material. You said it yourself. I don't know a single company, and I talk to a lot of companies, I don't know a single company that isn't going through some sort of kind of quite significant cost control. And again, I'm not talking about localization. I'm talking about across the totality of the business, everyone is really kind of watching cost at the moment. So these, there we are. So I'm hearing it from a CEO. So those things will continue to be important. However, they're probably not things which are going to get you much more than a kind of well done pat on the head from a CFO, as in, hey, great, well done, you reduced cost by 10%, fantastic. But as I always kind of complain about cost reduction, for example, the ultimate goal is to reduce it to zero in the eyes of a CFO. That for me is a slightly dangerous game, because you're giving away resource when we're just talking about then localization as a cost center. That I never like. That's always a terrible place to be, because what we want to be talking about is, hey, how are we helping grow the business? So this is where I find it extremely interesting to kind of basically borrow other people's KPIs. I'm very fond of saying, that almost nobody can ever really kind of own 100% the KPIs in an organization, which is to say the KPIs associated with all the different roles that we have in any organization, they sort of control them. They sort of, can be responsible for them, but typically it's an effort of many, many, many different departments. Revenue, for example, you can say, hey, this is the role of a sales team or a marketing team or something like that. Yeah, but only if the product is, halfway decent. So we have to get, I think, localization perspective, get out there and just start kind of co-author, co-build KPIs with other parts of the business. Hey, marketing people, what is it that you need to move? How can we help you move it? How can we share those KPIs? Hey, salespeople, how can we build a stronger collaboration with you? Hey, even, kind of operations people, customer service people, etc. How can we partner with you to help move metrics that really, really matter?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I do a lot of work with marketing teams, and in marketing, the holy grail of marketing is personalization, right? We talk about personalization all the time. We've got ICPs, we've got personas, we've got personalized pain points. We spend an incredible amount of time and energy on developing personalization. And why do we do that? Because it works, right? It grows sales, it increases leads, all of these things. And I'm always shocked. I think this is really interesting. This is where localization comes in. And I think that connecting this synapse, I think, is really important. So when you're talking to a marketing department and they're talking about personalization, everything I just described, great, right? You do all this hard work, it's working, and then you go international and you either don't translate it or you translate it poorly, localize it poorly. You've just like completely blown up all of your efforts around personalization, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I would say finish the job, right? Finish the job. Not only do you personalize this for these personas, like the marketing person, the engineering person, the local, the technical documentation person within a specific vertical, right? And now finish it off, like localize it for that person, and you're going to get great results. And I think then when you start talking about, hey, we helped increase this country's growth by 10%, or conversion rate or lead count or something like that. Now, so to your point, in the CEO's mind, you're no longer a cost center, you're a revenue center. And that gives you a completely different purview within the company. So
exactly.
I think this go ahead. I think that this kind of gives you when teams start tracking these KPIs, how does that change their influence within the company?
I mean, it gives you considerably more influence in a company. As I mentioned, I mean, I've been really fortunate to kind of encounter quite a few teams who are really, really good at this sort of thing. They're good at kind of co-authoring KPIs and then sharing them across the entire business. It gives you a voice. It gives you a seat at the table, which then, of course, brings the possibility of broader influence. Because, to be blunt, most people I know in localization actually have very strong and very meaningful insights around customer experience more broadly, which, if they had a voice, they would listen to, and then people would really start to kind of realize their expertise. Localization people typically are much more familiar with the kind of product that they're working on than even the kind of salespeople, marketing people, particularly marketing people. No disrespect to marketing people, love them all, but the localization people typically have really been involved in kind of making the product. They understand how it's going to be marketed. They're brilliant at kind of bridging that gap. So you want to get that influence. You want to get a seat at the table. It also allows those teams, who are good at kind of telling the story to manage across the business, to manage up, to get a little bit more visibility. And let's be honest, visibility ultimately translates into resource as well. Right. Because if people believe in what you're doing, you're more likely to get the resources you need to keep doing more of it. And to your point, it helps turn localization from cost center to strategic lever. I've never believed that localization is like one of these kind of one and done functions. It's not like, oh, now our platform is in French and that's it forever. No, that's the beginning. We're going to have to keep building.
Right, and I think that's right. And then so let's dig into it a little bit. So, what does successful AI adoption actually look like in 2026?
Okay, okay. These are the huge questions. I love it. I love it. Um, and again, I've seen quite a few companies who have already started doing this really, really well. They tend to be in organizations that are, shall we say, kind of tech native, or where tech really kind of sits very, very kind of close to the kind of core, because they don't have the same fear, shall we say, of kind of just experimenting with things and let's just try it, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But there is a little bit more of that kind of mindset that, hey, tech could be we can even go for a kind of tech first solution sometimes. um, so yeah, it's in those kind of organizations, those kind of teams, you see like a really strong awareness of what AI can do. You also see that they will pilot small, they'll measure, they'll iterate, and then they'll scale. They're also building alongside that, because they're not being defensive, not trying to hold something back. They're actually able to kind of get in there and start building um, consistency, for example. So they're bringing something else to the table when they're, let's say, working with kind of tech counterparts, where they're saying, hey, this is how we can build a little bit more governance. We can build healthier guardrails, et cetera, et cetera. So again, yeah, those teams, the teams that kind of embrace it, end up having a little bit more influence. And influence, and that's a word we keep coming back to today, but like influence really matters, because if not, the danger is, we covered it at the top of this conversation, that other teams will adopt AI without them. I'm seeing it, you mentioned it already, but I'm also seeing it more and more that, tech teams are like, oh, there's this platform we're integrating, and it seems to have its own kind of, kind of AI enabled, or machine translation kind of function, and we can just switch that on, and that'll kind of cover all of our needs. And obviously, I mean, anyone working in localization, really understanding the complexity of localizing a platform, is going to throw up their hands in horror. But sometimes it's already too late. So get in there, keep talking about what we do, keep influencing.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I always hear these stories about that. When localization managers get frustrated with people inside the enterprise going rogue, right, and like doing their own thing. And I kind of say, listen, if they're doing that, that's because we're not doing our job. You know what I mean?
Well,
They're having to find they're getting a better solution or they're feeling like they're getting a better solution someplace else.
so let me ask you, I mean, the same question. Like, where do you, or rather the flip, like, what do you see as in your all the kind of customers you talk to, what do you see as the biggest blockers to AI adoption?
I see the number one is the fear of making mistakes. I think people are nervous about getting yelled at, right? We all have that experience where the country manager of name the country yells, "Oh, this translation's terrible. What are you doing?" That kind of thing. But I think that we need to move past that and be front-footed and lean in on this opportunity for us to really move localization more front and center into the growth engine of the enterprises that we serve. Number two, I think there's a lack of guidance or best practices, concerns about the right way to do it. And in here, I mean, the only thing I can say is once again, once again, 84% of our translation is AI driven now. We've got hundreds of customers using across billions of words. We've got an incredible team of people here. If you have questions, if you're not sure, we've got incredible solution consultants and folks that can help you, build this out based on best practices. So I think we're at the point now where we feel very like, to us, this is at 84, once again, at 84%, this is the way it is, right? So we know how to do this. And I think that, when I think about governance, I think about guardrails. We work really hard to build that in. We think about creating high quality on brand translations, right? So I think some of the remarkable things about what we're doing with AI translation now, where we're creating custom trained engines, right, that deliver high quality on brand translation, because we're integrating translation memory. We're using RAG to integrate glossary, style guide, terminology, etc., right, and then using LQA at the end, right, to ensure high quality and brand compliance, right? So these are some of the remarkable things. These are some of the things that are bringing down that turnaround time by 6x, improving quality, reducing cost per word. our goal is, the way I see it, and once again, coming from having, a person that's been building e-commerce and software companies for 20 years globally, like, I want everything localized because I know the impact it has on conversion rate, right? But it's been like the cost and effort. To me, AI, implementing this the right way in an automated way is the big unlock, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
100%.
so these are some of the things that I get excited about. So kind of moving into, once again, actionable insights, right? What can our listeners, what can you do now to be successful? So if someone listening today wants to make immediate progress, what's the one thing they can do this week?
What do you do this week before going on holidays or whatever you're up to over the holidays? Okay, so very unsurprisingly, I'm going to say number one, make a plan. Don't just make a plan. Draft a plan. Start sharing a plan. Get feedback on the plan. Surprise and delight everyone with a hey, I've got a 2-pager. Have a look at this before you go on holiday or whatever. And really start thinking about, what are the right sort of KPIs in that to be able to connect it with things like, revenue, risk, customer experience. And I would say alongside that, think about how do I build a reputation in my organization as a subject matter expert in 2026? Starts now. So there's a strategic plan, probably a couple of pages, something that can be shared to get people kind of on board with, hey, this is where we're heading. And you don't need to worry about it. We're already thinking about, all AI adoption, all of these things. And then how am I going to build better visibility? How am I going to build reputation in my organization so that people take me really seriously? So I have yet more conversations. Well, that's what we're looking for, a flywheel of just better and better communication, better and better collaboration, better and better cooperation, and kind of co-building across the business. And as part of that, I'm a big fan of just kind of claim time in calendars of, your leaders, of your kind of collaborators, meet with people, have a coffee with them. I think people will still do that in 2026 from time to time, and just find ways of kind of selling your vision up and down across the org. You need to go a little bit too far.
I think I agree with you, Chris. I think you're really good at this. I think this. So once again, as a kind of like sharing my perspective as a CEO, I love it when people do that. Okay, I know it's probably terrifying, but I love it when someone comes forward and say, "Hey, I'm grabbing 15 minutes in your calendar because I've got this thing that is going to improve, the growth of this company. It's going to do something. I've got this plan. I want to run it past you." I'm more than happy to take those types of meetings because I think they're very exciting, and it shows growth. So that's why I say be front-footed, be bold, and I love this idea of have a plan, know the KPIs, and start building your reputation as a subject matter expert. I think that's really, really sound advice. And I think, kind of like to build on this a little bit, I would take it a step further. And if you're not already doing this, I would suggest you do a controlled pilot. I would pick a use case or a language and test the results. Go for it.
Yeah, perfect. There we are. Just get out there and play with the technology to a large extent, and just put that in your plan. Say, hey, we are going to run pilots. We are going to experiment. We are going to test and learn. That there isn't really an option to anymore.
I agree. I do think this is such an important message because I'm seeing this across the organization. Once again, kind of coming back to the beginning, there's a reason why there is an anxiety out there, and I think it is founded. I think that I tell young people this all the time. I tell people this all the time, right? Like this is something, right, wrong, or indifferent. You have to lean into it. You just do. I do as a CEO. I have to show AI results to my board the same way that everyone on all my team leaders have to show AI results within their organization. It's just, once again, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's a thing that's happening. An expectation is set. And as we talked about before, this is one of the things I feel really confident in. We're showing really tremendous results for the organizations that we're helping implement these solutions for. So if you have
exactly. I mean, I've also said this before. You don't need to fix this by yourself. You can partner with external organizations, Smartling, whoever, but in your case, Smartling, to actually build the right kind of solutions for your organization. So, I mean, nobody is doing it by themselves. There is a
Yeah.
community there to support.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in fact, to kind of segueing into this as we begin to wrap up here, to learn more about this and to get a deeper dive into how you can plan for a productive and successful 26, we're actually hosting a series of hands-on workshops across Europe and the U.S. early next year with Chris, as a matter of fact. So I think Rachel will drop it into the chat. If you're interested in attending one of these workshops in a city near you or maybe where you live, just take a look. We're happy to have you. We've been doing these now for the past year and a half or so, and they're really great because we really do get hands-on. And not only do you get to hear from experts like Chris and others, but we invite all the localization and marketing folks involved with localization in your city to this, and so you get a great chance to network and learn from your peers. So, all right, that's the regular broadcasted content today. Let's see if we've got some questions here for us. Let me see if I can do this here.
But by the way, I just want to acknowledge we are seeing a few kind of messages appearing and various people from various parts of the world saying hello back to all of you. It's really lovely to see all these messages. I love it.
Yeah, no, I know it is. It's awesome. Thank you so much for participating.
It's a great industry.
Yes, I know. I do love it. It is a lot of fun. Okay, question number one here. Would you agree that with AI becoming as big as it has in the past few years, it makes it harder for graduates of translation and localization courses to enter the industry since AI is eating away at a lot of the entry-level positions?
So if I had to answer in a word, then obviously I would say yes, because it is changing the dynamic of the industry. There's no question about that. Am I very worried kind of long term? Not very long term, no, because I think we are still going to need really kind of qualified linguists to help keep bridging the gap towards customers. To be blunt, the volume of translation actually kind of keeps going up year on year. There are more and more platforms that are localizing year on year. So yes, while the nature of the work changes, the overall pitch gets bigger and bigger constantly. And frankly, that's going to continue for quite some time to come. Now, are the nature of those roles going to change? Yes, clearly they are going to change. So what it means to be a linguist will also evolve over time. One of my concerns, by the way, is that people kind of get cold feet. Let's say you're very passionate about language and language processing, but you get cold feet, decide not to pursue it. Actually, in 10 years' time, 5 years' time, we'll have a bit of a gap because people kind of feel like it isn't really an option anymore. But I think it will continue to be an option. It will just change a little bit in shape. I don't know. What do you think, Bryan?
Yeah, same thing. And by the way, this is true with every entry-level position, whether it's in sales, marketing, engineering. It is. This is one of the challenges I think we have to solve going into AI. And so part of that is also being self-activating. I think that coming in, learning about AI, how to implement AI across an organization and a process puts you in a very, very strong position. I think that once again, it's, AI might replace your job, but someone who knows AI will, right? So I think that having, young people coming in who are, have more elastic brains than older people and a proclivity for technology, I think this is a really important part of what you do. Another question, I thought this was a good one. If you adopt a financial KPI, how do you measure what part of growth is due to localization? So Chris, I'll let you take a stab at that.
Yeah, this is where we need to be a little bit more. We just need to be a little bit more aggressive and care a little bit less.
Wait, were you in a marketing department at some time, Chris?
No, as it happened.
Yeah.
So I was actually having a conversation with a very good friend of mine who was his most recent position was VP of product in a very large company. We were having coffee about this and having a chat about this just a couple of weeks ago, and And I was arguing that it's actually really, really hard to ever attribute any kind of KPI to any specific role. Um, this guy's VP of product, and he said he disagreed with me a little bit because he said he still believes that, with sales you can get closest, but he said sales is the closest and product, forget it. And this is coming from a VP of product. Now, that doesn't mean that he's been operating without KPIs for many years. No, he's had KPIs, but he's also been very aware that his product teams, and he's leading very, very large teams of people, aren't necessarily impacting the KPIs in the way that the CEO imagines that they're impacting the KPIs. But they've worked with it because
we just had this. We go through this all the time. I see it all the time because I see it across all the functions, right? So we just had this discussion about attribution. So did that lead come from a salesperson or did it come from marketing, right? So as an executive, you have to learn how to parse these things and understand their influence on each other. There's nothing's ever black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so funny, I mean, the biggest challenge in marketing generally is attribution, right? I mean, it's that's external towards, kind of external customers, but it's kind of similar internal as well.
Totally. So break that down. So let's go. So I mean, in my mind, the KPIs that you always want to focus, you got growth, you've got conversion rate, you've got engagement. Like, let's start with, so I mean, to me, if you've got a country, right? So let's say we're trying to grow in Japan. What's the targeted growth rate for Japan, right?
Yeah.
What's the forecast? Great. And then did we take some actions that we felt would that would impact or help us achieve that goal?
Yeah, and the reality is, hey, we want to launch a new product in Japan, or launch in Japan. What's the role of localization? Well, I know it's not going to be possible without the lock team. So you could say, well, that's a 0 to 1 shift already. I think it's absolutely reasonable that the log team takes, a large chunk of the credit, and that they say, hey, you know what, 30% of our targets, whatever, are going to be set around the success of launching in Japan. We need to get away from, I believe, like relatively kind of safe operational metrics where, I see too many teams who, I've spoken to a lot of teams who have flagged this problem to me. Hey, our quality is currently at 98%. Should we try to get it to 99%? It's like, well, probably you should, but I wouldn't want to set any targets around that. And I definitely wouldn't want to link, let's say bonuses or something to that, because it doesn't feel like it's a 0 to 1 sort of change, right? It's not a step change. So let's be a little bit braver.
I agree. Listen, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but I can tell you, if you came to me and you said, hey, Bryan, we're going to spend, another $1 million or X amount of dollars to go from 97 to 98 or 98 to 99, I'd probably think twice about you, and not in the best way, right? If you came to me and said, hey, Bryan, we're going to, triple the amount of content that we produce, and we've done some experiments and it's improved conversion rate by such and such. And so we expect it to impact growth by such and such. I'd be pretty excited about that, right? That gets my attention, right? So I think it's really important. Like, I love, and we're really good, and it isn't like quality, cost, speed, right? Those are our operational metrics. Those are really important. That's like bread and butter. You got to do that. But if you're going to expand your influence within the organization, if we're going to get more budget, you have to start talking in terms of growth, conversion rate, those sorts of numbers, how you're influencing those numbers. I'll give you another example. We've seen this done a lot across our customers. And I've done it myself, is let's look at conversion rate, or let's look at revenue growth by page, right? So I've got, if you want really something dramatic, you can do a pre-post, like what was our conversion rate pre-translating, post-translating, A/B tests running side by side. We've had many customers that do this. They've seen significant improvement in shopping cart completion or conversion rate or revenue growth, all those kind of things. Or even like, okay, let's translate this human translation, AI translation, run it pre-post, A/B test. Like, those are all really, but product teams love to run that kind of stuff. And I think that's the kind of thing where now, all of a sudden, if I can go from a human translation that was 2 weeks turnaround, costing me 20 cents a word, to an AI translation, which is near instant and a fraction of the cost, and it's generating the same or very similar results, you've won. You've delivered a big impact there.
Yeah. We simply have to go through that slightly kind of uncomfortable valley of uncertainty, I'm going to put something out there and it may not have the impact that I want. And is that going to then lead to some sort of existential crisis? But it doesn't need to. We need to be approaching all of this, and particularly at the moment, approach everything with curiosity. Ask questions as much as possible. And because very, very few people across your organization have the answers, I guarantee. You're gonna figure out the answers together.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, this has been great, Chris. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation. I certainly did. And, once again, we're always available. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, on any of these topics. It's something, hopefully you can tell we've got a lot of passion around, and we're here to help all of you be as successful as possible. So, Chris, once again, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
And well, we're really looking forward to seeing hopefully many, many people coming along to these workshops. Super excited to be out on the road with the Smartling crew. We have many things to discuss, and I think we can bring an awful lot of value to your teams. Looking forward to that very much. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.